Hello and welcome to the India development debate. On the face of it, GST seems to have not had the impact that it was expected to have, and people are already beginning to dismiss the most ambitious tax reform in India. Yes, numbers are not encouraging. The country seems to be ill-prepared a day after the August GST collections reported an over 3.5% dip from July. A mega ET Now EY survey finds that corporates, vendors and retailers are still not fully prepared for the new tax regime. Many also insist that the cost of compliance and business has shot up.
But instead of criticizing the GST, we at ET Now have decided to take a stand on this issue because GST is a progressive reform. Flawed execution should not shake our belief in the fact that GST makes India a single unified market. We instead will help the government and stakeholders to find solutions. We ask these questions. Why are businesses not ready 90 days after the rollout and the fact that the GST was coming? What can be done to simplify the entire process? What can be done to refund faster? What can be done for small businesses that are perhaps struggling to comply with the GST? Because we at ET Now believe to rise with India, we do need a GST. It may not be perfect to begin with, but the onus lies on each one of us to make it better. The big GST check is the focus of tonight's India development debate. I'm Supriya Srinath in New Delhi, and joining me all the way in Mumbai is my colleague Sandeep Gurumurthy.
Yes, let's take it across to our Power Pack panel. Then on the show this evening, we've got Ms. Vanaja N. Sarna, chairperson of the CBEC. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us on the show this evening. Also joining us, Uday Pimprikar, partner indirect tax at EY, Ajay Sahai, director general and CEO at the FIEO, the Federation of Exporters, and Dr. Arvind Virmani, a former chief economist at the IMF and president at chintanlive.org. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking time out and joining us on the India development debate. Ms. Sarna, I'm going to start off with you. How are you reading the August GST collections? Are you concerned by the marginal drop that we've seen in August, or do you believe it's too early to jump to any conclusion?
I don't think there's cause for concern. You would have seen the press release we issued yesterday and also the figures. If you recollect, in the month of July, we had reported a collection of about over 92,000 crores. We also yesterday had put out our brief about over 90,000 crores. Now, when we gave the figure for the month of July, we were talking as on the 28th or 29th of August. Right now, we are talking as on 25th of September. So we still have these remaining 4 days that we are looking at for a direct comparison. Also, as you know, all the entire lot of assessees have not yet filed their returns. We are looking at a slightly enlarged assessee base for the month of August, and we've still got about 30 lakh assessees that have to file returns and pay. So I would not gauge or suggest in any way that there is any less revenue that is being collected.
Okay, so the word from the government is that there are many more who are still left to file these returns. This number should not be read into too much detail. This isn't discouraging for the GST. That's the voice from the government, and it does matter today. But Uday Pimprikar, if I may point this to you, 90,000 crore rupees collected in the month of August. Yes, it's a marginal drop of about 3,000 odd crore rupees from the month of July. What is this number comparable to last year? There are just so many variables. So what do you really compare this number to?
So I think, I mean, I heard ma'am just before this, and I agree with her. I think the numbers are by and large comparable. There could be some amount of transitional kind of transitional issue that possibly these numbers can go through. For example, right now, people might be grappling with how to take the credit or do some of the compliances, and that's why the compliances might have got delayed. There might be slightly lesser amount of credits that people might have taken for the first couple of months, and then the credits will get taken a little later. But I think on a generic basis, I think we are not, there's absolutely no reason to be overly concerned about. It will be good to look at maybe a quarter's revenue or maybe the next 4 or 5 months revenue to actually understand what the eventual trend of the tax payment is. Mind you, right now, most of the filings that have been done and the payment has been done is under consolidated or a summary return that people have filed. And people might have been a little bit more conservative in payment of tax, and a lot of people might still be in the process of filing and even making the payment.
Okay.
So we will need to see where this goes, and I don't think there is a huge cause of concern on the overall revenue.
Okay, no huge cause of concern on the overall revenue. Dr. Virmani, let me bring you in, because an important fact to note here is that only a little more than half of the SSCs have met the deadline to file the GST return. So are you hopeful that this implies that the other half will now come in with more awareness and will pay this with interest? Because that sort of gives hope that numbers will also significantly improve from here on.
See, I'm less worried about the revenue. I think too much emphasis has been paid by the GST Council, and it's not just a matter of the union government. The 29 states, I'm sorry to use this word, but they've been obsessed with revenues. GST can be a revolutionary change. You cannot measure it in rupees and pies. I think that's, I want to bring that out very clearly. Now, to me, the major problems are that the small traders and small business, because of the complexities, which in my view are unnecessary and not necessary at all, their compliance costs, both in terms of the time which the owner, there's one entrepreneur, he may have 1 or 2 employees. Both the time and the cost of just collecting all this data, feeding it in, filing reports. The bureaucratic stuff, in my view, can be much simplified for up to small, medium companies. The large companies don't have a problem. They have the people, they have the systems to comply. So that is what is really bothering me. And of course, the 2 other things which were mentioned earlier, I think it's time again to bring them up. One is the multiple rates on similar goods and services, and second is the multiple rates itself. I think the GST Council must progressively take these on and do something about it, and otherwise they'll find in 6 to 9 months there will be a backlash from these small and medium companies.
Okay, just hold your thoughts there, because it's time I take this straight across to Ms. Vanja Sarana, who's right here with us. And ma'am, this could indicate, if I may, that many taxpayers who migrated from the earlier regime because of the higher threshold are not paying taxes due to the higher threshold. What is your assessment on the other half, that has not complied? So 6.82 registered, but the half of it has not complied. What's your view on those people?
Well, let me just mention, as I just said right now, that for the month of August, when we gave out the figures yesterday, we talked about people who had paid, which was roughly in the range of about 37 lakh assessees. But between yesterday and we are talking today on the 27th, that is maybe a couple of days difference, I've already got an additional 3 lakh assessees who have filed and paid. So this is literally something that is going to happen on a daily basis. I do expect that those who have registered will slowly come into the fold, will file their returns and make payments. So again, exactly what others who have said on this panel, that there is no serious worry right now. The problem right now is to ensure that people who have to register, and obviously automatically your revenue will come in. And there was a comment made also a little while back about the council needing to look at slabs and rates, etc. I think these are things that will come about by and by. We were looking at rolling this out and having a smooth implementation and rollout, which I think has happened. It's the 3rd month now. We did expect, I can't say we expected it to be glitch free, we did expect it. Obviously, in such a mammoth task, something or the other will come up. But just for your information, in fact, we have been bringing out a number of press briefs, which you would be aware of, maybe almost 35 to 40 of them, to clarify and to ensure that people understand wherever problems have been raised. And a lot of other problems that came up after the 1st of July have gone before the council. They have gone before the various committees that look into aspects, and changes have been made, rules have been tweaked, procedures have been changed. I think this is a very dynamic situation we're in, and we need to be progressive enough and flexible enough to absorb needs of the assessees and change or tweak or improve things as we go on.
Point noted. Let's now dive into the exhaustive EY-ET now CXO poll, and I want to tell my panelists here that that EY helped poll a whole host of CXOs in corporate India to get a mood of India Inc.'s preparedness and their pain points as far as GST is concerned. And I'm sure some of these findings will be of use to the government as well. One of the findings, and what is evident, is the fact that there has generally been a poor level of preparedness at the level of corporate India. This survey says that almost 90 days into the rollout of GST, level of preparedness is poor. 82% feel that vendors are only partially ready. 73% of the CXOs polled feel that their own IT system is only partially ready. Mr. Sahai, let me come to you on this note, because you represent exporters, and I know there are concerns on liquidity, which we will come to in a bit. But as far as the level of preparedness is concerned, what explains this lack of preparedness at a broader level as far as India Inc. is concerned to GST?
In fact, for GST, to me, means generational shift in technology. We have to put our focus on technology. Let us not blame the GST alone. There are issues with the connectivity also. When in a country I cannot complete a mobile call, which is about 3 minutes, how do you expect that we will get the connectivity also for filing our return or refund? So that's the key issue. When you are talking about the export sector, I think export sector is much better prepared so far as the filing of return is concerned. A large number of exporters have already filed their GSTR1 and GSTR3B, not only for the month of July, but also for the month of August. They are eagerly awaiting for the refund. We had a couple of discussions with the government also. The good news is that government is quite sympathetic to our views to provide some relaxation and allow refund on the basis of GSTR1 and GSTR3B. I do agree there are technological challenges, but let me put it, it's not the challenge which is only with the GST, and there are a lot of issues with the connectivity as well.
Okay, so issue with connectivity, not just with GST, and I think that should be some amount of solace that when the connectivity gets better, perhaps this is going to improve as well. But Ms. Sarna, if I may bring this to you, the survey also shows that as far as readiness of supply chain goes, 73% of those polled believe it is only partially ready. Does this also explain sluggishness in collections, and were you perhaps expecting this?
See, I think the announcement of the government that we are going to roll out on 1st of July was very much, the writing was on the wall. And for the big entities, as we've said, perhaps it was easier for them. But I also think that 3 or 4 months, advance time and notice was quite sufficient to be in readiness. Now, a lot of people, as we are looking at even the filing of returns, people are just not in a rush to file. Of course, there is a last date and a due date, but I think it's nice to be compliant and try. We have been encouraging them through advertisements and through media that we would request you to file as early as possible, especially for big units, because it just is going to simplify the whole process for others as well. So honestly speaking, I think readiness was something that people should have been looking at already, and a lot of other facilities were given. CBEC and even the state officers have been doing a lot of hand holding. We have actually had live demonstrations on how to fill your forms, how to register, how to file a return. As you know, we have the GST Seva Kendras right down to the range level, and our ranges are about 3,900 or so across India. State level officers are also doing their best. We've had so many mass campaigns. I think it runs into almost 5,000 such campaigns that we've had, which are of awareness as well as of helping people, literally hand holding. So I really think with all the facilities available, it is also a mindset. I think people who needed to do this needed to take advantage of the facilities being provided by state and center, coming forward and trying to utilize whatever we are offering so that they're not in a position where they're struggling. So I really feel even those who, the smaller entities, I know who are struggling, had the facility to come to the GST Seva Kendras to meet the commissioners or any level of officer and get their problems resolved, whether it was IT, procedural or any other.
All right. Uday, let me bring you in here. What explains this sort of lack of preparedness? You work very closely with corporates, helping them transition to GST. What's your sense? What explains this lack of preparedness? Is this understandable? Do we need to be a little more patient in hand-holding mid-sized corporates and especially SMEs as they transition to this GST regime?
So I think it's understandable. I think while I think the government has a point of view that everybody should have been ready, the fact is that the law is not simple, and neither are compliances that have been suggested extremely easy to kind of go ahead and put in place. It requires a huge amount of effort to first have absolute clarity on the law, and also some amount of effort to kind of get that IT systems in place so that the relevant variables that are required to be reported can be identified and reported on a real-time basis. And mind you, we haven't yet gone ahead and gotten into the GSTR2 compliances, which require some amount of reconciliation liability. So the fact is that as it's coming out in the survey, the fact is that while people might have started late, and there was a reason for it, because the law got crystallized maybe in the last quarter, the rules came out fairly late in the day, and people found it difficult to then suddenly go ahead and get their act in order. The second is that even now, if the government goes ahead and continues, and which I think partially has been done till December,
right,
some amount of summary compliances and give people time to go ahead and do these compliances that are required to be done at a later date, defer it a little bit, then the amount of angst and anxieties that people are facing right now to get themselves compliant will materially come down.
Right.
If the legislation, the movement towards GST is great, but I think some amount of sensitivity and relaxation on the compliances, at least through this transition period, is extremely important.
Uday, I will discuss solutions in just a bit right here as well, but let me take this across to Mr. Ajay Sahai, and I am going to touch upon another part of the survey, because 58% of those polled believe that GST has led to both material increase in working capital requirement and a disruption in trade impacting sales. It's a double whammy of sorts. I know exporters have had to bear the brunt because about 65,000 odd crore rupees are stuck in refunds. Mr. Sahai, how dire is the situation? And I want you to be frank and candid here.
Let me put the things into perspective. Exporter in the pre-GST regime were enjoying exemption both on the import of inputs required for export production or for procurement of inputs for export production. In the post-GST regime, we are required to pay taxes on those purchases. So first of all, to some extent, there are issues with regard to availability of the credit. The related one is the cost of credit. This has hit badly the small and medium exporter, particularly because they have already paid the taxes, they have to wait for the refund, they have again paid the taxes for the month of August, and they are still waiting for that. Let me also put into that Indian exporter are competing with the countries where GST or VAT system is in operation, and still those exporters are getting exemption under the GST and VAT regime. There are a number of countries in Southeast Asia, the complete European Union where VAT system is in place, they are providing exemption on any inputs required for exports. Let us see the two countries or the two regions. In India, the cost of credit is at least 5 times than what is in the European Union. The exporter in India is 1/10 of what an educated exporter in European Union. The system in European Union is much efficient than in India. If in such situation we have worked out a separate mechanism for export, there should be some merit into that. I'm all for the GST. We are very clear that in the long run GST will help the sector, particularly on the logistics cost of the export. But we need to look into what helps in providing compatibility to Indian exports.
Okay, fair enough. It's a question of
competitiveness of export is reduced even by 0.5%.
Okay,
we will definitely lose the market.
Yeah, fair enough. You're making a point that competitiveness of Indian exports is at stake. Ms. Sarna, I know the government is sympathetic to this pain that exporters are facing, and you've had a few rounds of consultations on this particular issues as well. How soon can we expect some respite for exporters, because this is a genuine liquidity problem that they're facing?
Well, let me, as you may be aware, there was a committee on exports which has been set up and which is actually looking at all the pinch points that the exporters are facing. In fact, I think Mr. Sahai is also aware, he's been part of the discussions. We've had several rounds, as you rightly said. We are looking at the different areas of refund that the exporters would be seeking, which includes the IGST refunds on export. It also includes the accumulated input tax credit, which they will seek as refund. There are issues of refunds which are being sought when exported under bond and LUT. So there are several issues. All of these have been discussed pretty threadbare. The intention being is to give benefit to exporters as fast as possible. We understand that working capital is getting blocked. This is not a very good situation. Ideally, with a robust, with a robust refund mechanism in place, we should have not had this problem at all. But again, as I said, you have some teething problems in the beginning. We're trying to sort of tide over them. And I believe that as far as the IGST refunds are concerned, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Sahai, we are looking at a situation of using the GSTR 1 and 3B. And definitely for the month of July, we are hoping to be able to give the refunds by the 10th of October. So I think once this gets kicked in, we would find solutions for the future months as well, until such time as the system is in place and we are back with proper utilities available for filing of refunds, and I think things will fall in place then.
Dr. Virmani, I'm going to quickly bring you up to date with the other part of the question that we polled here, and 54% of those polled believe, in fact, sorry, 77% of those polled believe that there has been an increase in compliance costs, and that's an overwhelming majority. What can the government really do to reduce the compliance cost according to you, Dr. Virmani?
So first, let me very briefly on exports. I think the exporter has very nicely explained it. You know, a year ago, one started hearing this from exporters. So anybody who has dealt with exports, the whole idea of a VAT, whether in India or across the world, should have known. It is very, very unfortunate and sad that I thought that maybe they did know, but it seems like the GST committee was not aware of this. So what you have basically done is you effectively raised the tax on exports, whatever you can call it, bureaucratic delays, whatever.
Compliance.
But the way the system is set up, unless you have a refund the next day after this thing, so that is it. The compliance costs are much higher. The exporter earlier could just not pay the tax. Now he had to pay it and do all the compliance also. The cost of the what he has said is separate. So the compliance costs have gone up enormously. There is absolutely no doubt about it for the small and medium. People do not understand. People say, oh, these are 5 things. Well, if there is an entrepreneur, a single guy, whether he is running a shop or he's having a small production unit, he has to do everything. It's not that he has tens of people he hires and they collect. The CA sitting in office is not going to collect that data for him. There has to be somebody there who has to guide, and he has to spend a lot of time. So there is absolutely zero doubt that the compliance cost, even if there are no technical or computer problems which we have discussed a lot, are sorted out, the compliance cost for the tiny and small industry will definitely go up. So and And the reason, let me give you an example. You know, I've talked to many small scale people and I'll give you two examples. One of them said, my input is 18%, my output is 18%, no problem. Okay. So that is how much simplification just having a single rate makes. If it's both 18 input output, there is no problem. But there are other people who have said, I have 10 different rates on the input side, on the output side. Huge problems, huge compliance costs for these people.
Mr. Anna, come in on that, and that is the kind of stress that a lot of small and medium enterprises are facing, some of which that Dr. Virmani alluded to as well. And the fact is that overwhelming majority believe that compliance costs has gone up. And Uday made this point as well from EY, that that's something that he would urge the government to look at. Is that something that's under consideration? What can the government do to reduce the compliance cost as far as businesses are concerned for GST?
You know, in fact, as far as compliance cost is concerned, I think the initial, when we rolled out the GST and pre-GST, when we're looking at it, we are actually looking at GST as a solution for compliance costs and reducing compliance costs. As you know, there are so many areas which have changed. We are into digitization in a very big way. We are looking at also, you know, common records. It's a common market. I think in the long run, the compliance cost will come down. I fully agree that in the beginning, especially for the small and medium sector, perhaps there is a pinch point. There are issues of the requirement of capital, which at the moment, at least as far as the exporters are concerned, this is very much a concern for government, and we are looking at ways in which neither the compliance cost should increase, nor in fact what was mentioned that exports should not get more difficult or more expensive because of the GST. So I think we're already apprised and we're already looking at the matter.
Okay, Uday Pimprekar, if I may come to you, 54% of those polled, which is a majority there, believe that the cost of doing business has gone up. GST was meant to improve ease of doing business and increase efficiency, but yes, the cost of doing business has gone up. Do you believe this is a temporary blip and will pass as things smoothen out?
I think so. I mean, clearly, I think people are going through fairly trying times right now in getting themselves compliant. People have a little bit of working capital issue. People also have actually a very significant issues related to transitional credits. And I think, I mean, while we are in touch with the government is fairly receptive to all of the suggestions and the discussions that we have had. And some of the issues obviously are fairly major right now. Some businesses have got hit a bit badly, and some of the people are actually facing this transition. For example, I think a number of provisions have been included in the law to kind of restrict, which have an effect of restricting transitional credits in case payments are not done before September and so on and so forth. And when you have these kind of provisions with a very small window of 3 or 4 months, it's obviously going to create a little bit of heartburn, and that is also translating into what people feel about the entire legislation as of now. But I think as we go along, and I hope and I'm fairly certain that the government will look at genuine problems which are leading to commercial issues and disputes, and which are also impacting people's costs, at least to the transition period. Once the government starts looking at it very, very receptively and starts giving and making changes to the law to give or reduce this cascading impacts wherever that are being carried out, this amount of angst will surely come down. I think 2-3 things I think the government should look at quickly doing. One is that reduce or rationalize the compliance effort right away by allowing people to go ahead and do summary returns for some time. Defer this entire detailed compliance of GSTR 1, 2 for some time, so that people get more comfortable and put in place, and look at these transition issues. The moment all these 3 things are looked at and fairly aggressively looked at quickly, the amount of heartburn that one sees at times reduces materially.
Sure.
Exports, there are quick solutions that need to be done there. And
I'm just going to interrupt
those can be handled quite easily.
Okay, Uday, I'm just going to interrupt you, and I do want Ms. Sarna to comment on that. But before that, I want to throw another question to Ajay Sai, because this, to me, if you ask me, this is probably one of the worrying findings. And this survey says that 66% of the people, CXOs polled, believe it will take more than 6 months for things to stabilize. So 66% believe it's going to take another 6 months, which means 6 months more pain is what corporate India envisages. Ajay Sai, comment on that. Why do you think it's going to take so long, and what can be done to sort of bring this down to just another month? Because I don't think the economy can afford another 6 months of pain on account of GST.
No, in fact, I think a lot of assumptions are related to the last date of filing return. Let us say for the month of July, the GSTR3 can be filed as late as 10th of November. So if the refund has to flow, I'm talking about the exports, it will start to you somewhere in December, and 6 months may have been reckoned from July till December. I personally feel that people have their apprehension with regard to the matching of the inputs of GSTR1, GSTR2, how it will be auto-populated, whether the supplier has filed his return or not, are some of the issues. But let me also tell you that there in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, as rightly told by Mr. Virmani, they are a small exporter, a small manufacturer, they are one-man army, and for them to file all these returns accurately is an issue that definitely brings the issue of compliance cost, which may go up slightly. But over a period of time, we feel that since this is a completely automated system, the returns will file online, refund will flow automatically to exporter's account. Once the thing stabilizes, then definitely it will benefit the export sector, it will benefit the manufacturing sector and the overall economy.
Okay, before we close, I really want to take this question also to Dr. Virmani. And Dr. Virmani, is this a worrying number that's coming your way? 66% believe more than 6 months for the organizations to stabilize to this new regime. I mean, how much of a flux does that really create for policy makers?
See, the most small businessmen are very scared of tax authorities. And they still don't have faith. You know, some of us have been arguing for digitization and electronic stuff, and they perhaps don't realize that that will help. As Mr. Gentleman just said, the digitization and automatic filing will help if systems run smoothly. But there is another level, which is I referred to right in the beginning, of things which are coming. Some of the cross-border sales of services have big complications by design, and there is going to be, after 9 months, a whole slew of legal and other cases, or rather bureaucratic investigations. You know, the corrupt bureaucrats at the state level may be lying low, but once all these things are filed, a year is over, there are some very severe complications which have been introduced in the cross-state service sales. So yes, some things will become easier, quite right, but there are other things which, again, the person who knows the law much better than me has hinted. There are going to be a whole bunch of legal things which will come even from the normal filing. See, transition is special, so I really don't blame anybody if there are transitional problems. Those were bound to occur. But what I am really concerned about, problems which are not going to go away, which are long term, and which are the 3 categories I mentioned.
Sure. Ms. Vanjasana, you want to comment on that, because a lot of specific points have been raised now, because again, we're doing this debate here at ET now with an idea to find solutions, not really to sort of get people fighting with each other, as you'd appreciate. So some points have been made there by Uday Pimprikar, by Ajay Sai and Dr. Arvind Virmani, specific points that they believe the government could look at to provide immediate relief. Your comments on them, ma'am?
Let me just say that some of the points that were raised related actually to the government being sensitive to the problems at the ground level, and trying to help in terms of extending dates, etc. This has actually been done. As you know, the summary return, the 3B return, the date has been pushed in fact now and extended up to December. I find that in many other areas with the issues that have been raised by some of the panelists, they would very well understand and know also that government has been receptive, in fact very transparent. People have been taken on board. We have taken a lot of feedback of the problems that have happened. They are categorized into different levels. Some of them are IT related. Those are being looked at by the GST, and there are those which could be on the legal issues. Some are procedural. In procedural, and all of them know that the council meets almost on a monthly basis. The agenda is really big, and a lot of things are taken to the council, which is based on the feedback that we are getting. There are some things we are doing suo moto, there are some things that we are getting from the field level and from the associations and trade. Those are being handled. So I think in such a big task that we've undertaken, as and when, and that's why I talked about flexibility also before, government is very flexible, is looking at helping the assessee along the way to move through this transition and to finally reach a point when the system is working well. On the other factor that people raised, or so one of the panelists raised, it is a fact that eventually when you have digitization and you have all the utilities available, whether it is for refunds, whether it is filing an appeal, for everything, as you know, there is no physical interface. This is one of the very big factors I feel that we should appreciate the GST for. I agree that today those are not yet fully there, but when they are there, it's going to take away a lot of the burden of having to run from office to office. Your very merger of taxes, the fact that you have to go to only one authority, the fact that everything is going to be through IT connectivity, is going to reduce the burden of having to meet an officer if you don't want to. And the issue that was raised about corruption, all these things will get eradicated by this. Now, I think at the moment, over the last 3 months, things that have come to notice of government have been seriously looked at. People have been brought on board, groups of people. As you know, we have 18 sectoral groups. Those sectoral groups consist of officers of both the center, the state, and even joint secretaries from the concerned ministries. So sector-specific issues have been addressed to these sectoral groups. We did a lot of publicity and brought out, in fact, sectoral guidance notes so that people do not face difficulty. I can't even think of the number of advertisements that we must have been put out, including full-page advertisements for exporters, any number of circulars for different people, different types of people and assessees. So I think from government's point of view, everything that is being brought to notice of government is being looked at positively. It is being looked at in a healthy manner. We understand it is not a criticism. It is actually a way of helping government to perhaps see a viewpoint which may not have been noticed and address it. I think at the moment, between all the various, the GIC is available, the sectoral group is available, you have a fitment committee, you have got the law committee. Right. It's going before so many committees to be looked at before it finally reaches the council. So I think the requirement that the trade is expecting is definitely being met. Of course, there is always this feeling that it's not as fast enough and as as quick as we need it. But I think for the exporters particularly, we are seriously looking at a lot of options that will help them to ease over the present this capital blockage problem, the refund issues problem, and within a few days, I think you will see some kind of assuaging of the problems of the exporters.
Indeed. On that note, I'm going to take quick closing comments. And Uday, if I may begin with you, because all is not gloom and doom. Even those who have found it difficult to comply, even those who are perhaps only partially ready, 90% of them actually believe that in the long term, the GST is positive, and the rest of the 10% are neutral and not negative on the impact of the GST going forward, or at least on the long term. That's heartening, isn't it? Uday?
Absolutely, and it's actually unheard of, right? I mean, any tax reform will have two sides, and one side will think that X is better and Y side is better, and so on and so forth. But this is one law and one tax reform which actually there is absolutely zero negativity towards. And I think kudos to the government to go ahead and press and have the initiative to put it in place. But I mean, just to add to what ma'am said, I can also say that I've been dealing with the government quite a bit on a number of matters, and it's extremely heartening to see the kind of initiative and proactiveness that the government is showing. Of course, a lot needs to be done. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. We have been consistently suggesting that the compliances need to be rationalized a little bit, and because this is not a very simple law to deal with, and I understand the complexity. It's a very large country. The total number of tax structure is far more complex than what ideally should have been, and so on and so forth. So there are some initial problems with GST that are there, and if the government continues to be sensitive and continues to be proactive the way it is, I think we'll get there.
Last question to you, Dr. Virmani, and again, we want to end on a slightly positive note. We've addressed the concerns made, reflected on the key pain points that everyone's talking about, but and you've been a big supporter of GST as well. We've had you on ET now for months now, talking about the need to have GST over the years, and which is why we wanted you in this panel as well. Do you believe that in the long run, the benefits of GST is so significant that this short-term pain is something that we should somehow withstand?
Absolutely. Give me 1 minute.
Sure.
I have worked on this VAT GST for 12 years, right from the beginning. And the constitutional amendment was a revolutionary change, and I have said that on your program. Secondly, what I hope for, and not instantaneously, but in the design of the thing after the constitutional amendment was passed, you recall the discussion we were talking about a uniform rate of 15, etc. I am really talking about those things. I think this could be revolutionary and a textbook example for the rest of the world. That is what pains me a little, that we are not thinking of that. We are too focused on the instantaneous revenue neutrality or revenue enhancement. So all my comments are not directed at a complaint. What I have is a benchmark that we could be the best in the world, and that's the point of view from which all my suggestions now are being made.
Indeed, absolutely. I mean, with that kind of experience, and that's exactly why we have you on the show, Dr. Virmani, because you've got that experience to share with the government. And what's heartening is that the government is indeed receptive about it. But thank you very, very much, Ms. Vanja Sarana. We've also glad to have Mr. Uday Pimprikar, Ajay Sahai, and Dr. Arvind Virmani amidst us to discuss and debate this very important issue. We at ET now believe that GST is a tectonic shift in India. For many businesses, it's an uncharted territory. But we have no doubt that for India to rise and grow, a broader tax base and more tax compliance is more crucial than ever before. There will be teething troubles, but the reform as big as this though.
Yes, the government needs to handhold industry. Dynamic policy changes are the need of the hour, but we'll urge stakeholders to not give up on the GST, because it's high levels of compliance alone that will ensure that in the long term multiple tax slabs will be reduced and rates could be lowered as well. Thank you for watching this special telecast of the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. We've got news and updates coming up on the other side. Keep it with India's #1 business news channel.